We're about ready to start, and I welcome everybody here. And with your permission, I'd like to open up with a statement because it's obviously a very important gathering of people and the sharing of information. Incredible as it may seem, it has been less than 4 months since the tragic events of May 31. In some ways, it feels like it's been much longer. In many ways, it's all too fresh and painful. People have asked why we are presenting preliminary results of the criminal investigation ahead of the report of the independent review. Because they are distinct work products that have been proceeding on separate, independent, and parallel tracks, the update being provided tonight will not influence the work of Hilliard Hines. While I'm not sure we will ever really understand why he did what he did, our hope is that the briefing will provide a more detailed picture of the suspect, and what happened on May 31st. Tonight's briefing is a testament to the professionalism and personal commitments of the Virginia Beach Police Department detectives who have dedicated themselves to painstakingly fact-finding to put this puzzle together. Because there has been so much speculation and incorrect information reported about the tragedy and the people involved, I want to emphasize 2 words: fact-finding. While the detectives' work along with the FBI is far from complete, to be able to provide this update is a major accomplishment, especially given the complexity of the events. Investigations like this typically take 10 months or longer to complete. Since the criminal investigation and independent reviews, as important as they are, represent only a part of what we have to deal with in the aftermath with this horrific crime. From relocating nearly 400 employees who worked in Building 2, to providing essential counseling and other support purposes for to the families and employees, while continuing to run the city has required incredible effort and commitments, both in time and money. In addition to the generous outpouring of emotional and financial support people in our community and around the world have shown to the victims and their families, the city has committed millions of dollars for everything from funerals, medical bills, workers' comp, and remediating Building 2. There is still much work to be done, including deciding what type of memorial would best honor our victims and determining long-term use of Building 2. It will take time and a kind of resolve that is uniquely Virginia Beach as we emerge more united, more resilient, and more VB strong. As a reminder, once the briefing has concluded, members of the council have the opportunity to ask questions, and we will then adjourn. There's no public comment tonight because this is a workshop briefing, not the final report. I am now turning this over to Chief Severa for opening remarks. No, I'm sorry, my apologies. We're going to do the independent investigative status update with Hilliard Hines first. Mr. Ramirez.
Good evening, Mayor Dyer, members of the City Council. My name is Lyndon Ramirez. For those in attendance or watching at home, I am the City Auditor. I have been in charge of administering the independent investigation. This evening, we have Arnett Heinz, who's the CEO of Hilliard Hines, and Deborah Kirby, who has served as the project team lead. Their objective and purpose for tonight is simply their monthly status update. Mr. Heinz will get into the status of where they're at, as well as provide their estimated completion date, where they will present their full report. And the question we have been getting is, will the full report be made public? When they present the full report, that will be made public at the same time that council receives, as well as it will be posted on our website, vbgov.com/cityauditor, where all of our audit reports reside for those interested. Just a few comments before I turn it over. As the administrator of the contract, I do want to say the firm is doing an outstanding job under the circumstances. They have stayed in constant communication with myself, keeping me abreast of their status. They have in turn let me know that they have received full cooperation from city management and staff, as well as the employees in their requests for documentation, their requests for interviews, and anything they need to move on forward with their investigation. They have also done an outstanding job in working and reaching out with those family members that want to engage with them. And as they will touch on from the last status meeting, we have agreed and we made some discussions on the merit of doing a survey to the employees. So a survey has gone out to all employees just today. So it was in the work for a couple of weeks, but it actually went to the employees today in regards to a employee satisfaction survey similar to the one that the city does. This one is being conducted independently. They've engaged a third party. The results, the comments are going directly to the third party, and I have confirmed with our deputy city attorney, that that information is not foiable. So we do encourage employees who have not either had the opportunity to share their concerns, share their issues previously, to please feel confident in taking that survey and sharing that information with the firm. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Heinz, and I do want to say, especially on this occasion, that as employees, certainly from my office, we will always remember the family, the victims, and hopefully both of these investigations is a step forward so we can have some closure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, good evening, Mayor, and City Council members. Thank you for having us here today. And Mayor, before I go into the comments, I'd like to make a reflection on your opening comments, which is exactly the point I'm glad you shared with the public. The investigation from the police department and our investigation are very distinct, but they do follow parallel paths. But there's no way that our investigation influences theirs or theirs influences ours. So just to reconfirm on that statement, I appreciate you making that comment. It's been 68 days since our team started work here in Virginia Beach. Today is our second update for the victims' families, the citizens of Virginia Beach, the City Council, and all Virginia Beach employees. Since July 19th, our team has maintained a weekly presence here in Virginia Beach. As I mentioned last month, we've had a steady stream of calls and emails to our toll-free number and our public-facing email. To date, we have received approximately 132 emails compared to last month's number of 95, and approximately 65 calls compared to last month's status of 50. As I previously reported, our team hosted 2 community sessions, listening sessions, and 2 employee listening sessions. As a result of these sessions and from information developed through our investigative process, our team continually heard concerns about a wide range of topics and issues, claiming that a hostile work environment potentially existed within city government. These issues included allegations that African American employees were being treated differently, that they were often more subject to discipline than their counterparts, that they were less likely to be promoted than their counterparts, that these employees felt they could not share their concerns with management for fear of retaliation. And overall, the employees and outside advocates that we heard from, we met with felt that management was creating a challenging and difficult work environment. Now, with that context as a background, we were attentive to those concerns. And many of those concerns were outside our original scope and mandate. Our team felt that the volume and nature of concerns raised might very well be impacting the overall workplace culture within city government. The concerns raised about a hostile work environment were in fact a key area of our investigation's focus as it relates to behaviors and motives that give rise to violence in the workplace. Consequently, we met with the city auditor, who agreed with our request to have us coordinate and conduct a fully independent survey of all city employees. Today, that survey, as Mr. Ramos announced, is being communicated and shared with all Virginia Beach employees. We would like to encourage all employees to participate in this survey, as this will end on October 13th. We need to run it for a couple of weeks to make sure that we get a full breadth of employee participation. And as you'll see later on, that's one of the issues impacting the timeliness of our report to you. To date, we've conducted 189 interviews. These have included 13 of the 16 families that we've met with from in this matter, and 121 scheduled employees interviews have been conducted. 85 of these interviews were for employees that were in Building 2. 22 interviews have been with members of the public. We've also been able to participate with 31 telephone interviews from individuals calling in on the hotline. And finally, we've been able to locate and interview various family members of the assailant. In regard to the deceased victims, we have been able to meet with 9 of the 12 families. Catholic Charities is assisting us with outreach to 2 of the remaining families. And one family, at their request, has passed on an opportunity to meet with our team. Of the surviving victims, 4 civilian victims, we have interviewed 3. And the remaining victim that we haven't been able to meet with is out of state, but we did have a chance to meet with his family. For next steps in the interview process, we have 43 additional employees in Building 2 that we've had some outreach and trying to coordinate a time to meet and participate with a meeting. And because the number of employees in Building 2, we're taking another step by sending out, I think it's next Monday that we're going to send out another anonymous outreach survey to them to allow all the employees in Building 2 to give us a response of issues that they were concerned with. So whether or not we've interviewed them or not, this is still an opportunity for their voice to be heard in this process. And we also will include in that survey an option for those employees to schedule an interview if they so desire. So we're doing all we can to reach out to the employees that we felt can add the greatest insight to us. And as I reported last month, we have received a significant volume of electronic communication and emails. I last reported that we had received over 50,000 emails, but that this number would likely rise. Well, it did. We now have over 335,000 emails. That's about 115 gigabytes, and 6,500 documents composing of 2.62 gigabytes. And we are close to finalizing the analysis with this information. And we are on track to finalize our report in the coming weeks. As I'm sure you can appreciate, an investigation and an assessment of this magnitude has many known and unknown factors can influence the timeline. In this case, we've had 4 factors impacting our ability to deliver the report by October 15th, which was our original date that we were hoping to be finished by. And these 4 factors, the first is the overall level of outreach and engagement we've had with the public. A requirement from the police department around some reports and documents that all of the reports be reviewed on site in their department. Now, I will tell you that is a good practice to have that done. Our team was originally believing that we might be able to do some of that review at our corporate headquarters. But when we're engaged with the department and their request that we do all of the reviews on site, it's a best practice, and we concurred with that, and that's where the reviews took place. So that's not out of the line. And then the employee independent surveys that we're doing, and then last is the volume of data and electronic communications that we're currently analyzing. So these factors have extended our work by 3 weeks. So instead of a mid-October delivery, we've had discussions with the city auditor, and it appears that November 12th would be the best time for us to come make that final report. And we are working with the city auditor and Chief Cervera to coordinate a time with the families. We want to meet with the families first in a session where we're having a dialogue with the families, if they so intend to join us for that. But then shortly thereafter, we'll have an opportunity to present our report and high-level presentation for the public at a full council setting that you have here. And on the budget, that's the last item that we'll cover. You know, our preliminary project costs, we had a budget estimate of $389,995. To date, we've gone through about 90% of that budget, and there's been some issues that have impacted the budget that we cited earlier. But we're in discussions with the city auditor on that, and that should not be an issue for us whatsoever for us to stay on track to complete the work that we promised we'd complete for you. So that is my update for you, and I welcome any questions that you might have this time.
Any questions? Aaron?
Earlier, you started off with, first of all, thank you for all the work that you're doing in our community as well to help us find some answers and solutions to that tragic day. Can you elaborate, or I don't know if I heard you correctly, about the concerns you are dealing with now as far as the work environment, African Americans?
Yep.
Can you go back over that?
Absolutely. So, you know, during the public community sessions, the outreach sessions that we had, as well as the employee listening sessions, there were voices that we heard during those public sessions and the employee sessions that made allegations and claims on the issues that I just addressed. We also, during some of our interviews in the investigative process, we had those same issues that were brought up to us. The voices were heard loud and clear, and given the volume of concern that we heard, the multiple occasions, we felt from our position as the group coming in, stepping in here, and especially as it relates to a potential hostile work environment. We're not judging whether there is or isn't one yet. But based on the fact that the claims were being made and we were hearing this, we felt compelled that we had to go to the city auditor with this somewhat of a step outside our original scope. It's an important step, and we're glad the voices spoke up, and there's been certain advocates that have been also working and addressing this issue. So I think it's a topic, while when you hear all of those allegations, you want to say, okay, where's the substance behind it? And that's what we're trying to get to.
So are you limited in your scope of the investigation or not?
We're not limited in the scope of our investigation that relates to the issues that happened on May 31st. The issues that I outlined here may have a much broader impact that go well beyond May 31st. If those issues are outside May 31st, the mandate and scope that I received from the City Council was on the May 31st. It did not extend to the broader issues that I just addressed there. The important point I'd like to make, though, if it relates to a potential work environment that could have led to an act of violence, that is within the scope. And so that's what we're focused on. So if the scope were to go beyond Building 2 to other, then that would be an area that really would be outside the scope. That's why we're hoping that the employee workplace survey that we're doing will shed some insight. Because one of the issues that we heard as well as you all are well aware, there was a March survey that was done of employee satisfaction. But then with the voices that came up, there were concerns that that survey may not have been anonymous, that it may not have been, employees may not have participated in it because they didn't feel comfortable doing it. So those are some of the issues that drove us to coming to the conclusion it was best for us to recommend to the city auditor that we allow, and we've got a third party that will not even share with us who, the sources of how they're getting the information. And I think it'll be, in our final report, when we're prepared, we'll have some solid information to report back to the city council for you to make an assessment and opinion of where things stand in your workforce.
Thank you. Okay. Rosemary?
Quick question. So the original survey that you did, and then you did one just for building 2, when they come back, and I know they need to be anonymous, and I really get that, but it might be good to know if there are certain departments, so that if there was clustering of certain feelings, they could be, so was there a way that you track that?
Yes, we can give information to the survey team and try to track that, and I'll address that with our team to see what we can find out from the respondents of Building 2 to see if there's a way that we can track that information that comes in. But we're also doing a separate, and it might be best for us to do that when we send our own survey out, where we're going to have this team coordinate with us. But we're going to send this other survey out just to Building 2 next week. And so that would be the time that we could start focusing on that.
But you're doing one for all the employees?
Yes,
correct?
that one went out today.
And will you be able to tell where those respondents will be coming from, which departments?
Deb, is that right? Yeah.
Because I think that's important.
Yeah. So we can.
Demographics by department to distinguish what department and division those employees work.
Right, in case there's a pattern of some sort, we need to know that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have high confidence in the firm that we've selected, and we're confident that it'll be a comprehensive and thorough report.
Anyone else? Guy?
I know that you haven't been engaged to perform a complete review of all the security and safety issues in all the public buildings that Virginia Beach has. Believe me, I understand that. But I'm interested to know and would how you could see your report as a pathway towards such a study, and how much usefulness you believe your report may have in that regard.
We, from week 1, we sent a team of our security specialists here to address that very issue. While Building 2 obviously was, a site that was secured and protected, and we did assess other buildings similar to Building 2 to come up with observations about steps that could be better practices to enhance security. So to your very point, we're not assessing every city facility, but we're going to be able to make some strong recommendations about best practices that could be implemented. And then obviously we can be available to help guide in that direction. So we are addressing that topic.
John?
I have a question regarding data rights. I assume the city retains the data rights for the data being collected by the third party, is that correct?
Yes.
And does the third party have to, at the end of the study, provide evidence that, or proof or written certification that they've purged all their electronic systems of the data and that we're the only repository of the data that was collected on our behalf?
Let me check with our team that's handled that. Deb, you have any insight in that?
Right now, it's we contracted directly, sorry.
Oh, please come up to the podium.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Deborah Kirby, and the project team leader.
Welcome.
We've contracted directly with the survey company, and in terms of the destruction of data subsequent. But as far as the city retaining all data rights, that's not on the table right now, because of the way that the survey is being administered is that it's coming outside of the city environment, so the only thing that is being utilized is city email. And so your employees will respond to a link that will allow them to complete the survey, and then that survey then becomes the property, so to speak, of the consultant who does the analysis, and then we have the data destruction rights behind that.
So my question is, they do, at the end of the survey, they do have to certify that the data that they did collect
Yes.
was destroyed, is
Yes,
no
yes,
longer
yes, yes.
resident. That was the heart of my question.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sorry, I thought you were asking about where it was being retained.
No, just
But yeah,
when it's done, that it's removed and they can't further,
Right.
use it in larger studies, research,
No.
that kind of stuff.
No,
That's what I-
and this is not a research firm at that level, and our engagement is one-off, and we are very cognizant of the PII concerns for employees.
Thank you very much for closing the loop on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question.
Yeah, Sabrina.
You mentioned that you've already utilized 90% of the budget, with 10% remaining. Well, that 10%, do you believe, will enable you to complete your investigation?
We're in discussions with the city auditor because there are there's a significant component of expenses that are somewhat outside. So the original $389,995 and our discussions was a project fee for professional services. So we're in discussions with Linden about that. There might be some incremental requests for expenses that could be outside that, and that's what my promise is we're going to finish the work that we started, and if we can work with Linden to figure out how to get other expenses accommodated for, that's what we're driving for. So,
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you for a very informative and most important report.
thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Member.
Appreciate your hard work. Okay, at this point, we're going to bring forward Chief Severa and Deputy Chief Gallagher, who will make the presentations for today.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Stiles, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the fact that we get to give an update on our investigation. We are going to start, as we have everything that we do when it comes to this investigation, and that is to remember the individuals whose lives were taken on that day, as well as those that were injured on that day, including one of our police officers. We come from a position, and we have, and we will continue, of dignity and respect for those individuals as well as for their families. I believe that's the proper way that we should do everything when it comes to this investigation. Briefing outline is easy. We're going to talk about the findings to date. You will find that we have uncovered a lot of information. We still have a long way to go. We have our pending investigation work. You will find of the vast amount of hours that have been dedicated, the terabytes of information that we've uncovered, and yet what we still have to look at from this point forward. The resources that we've dedicated. We're going to look at the suspect's background, his work history, and then get very detailed on the timeline from May 31st, 2019, because that is going to be one of the issues that I think is going to take us to the end on this particular investigation. Deputy Chief Gallagher, he has the responsibility for both the Investigative Bureau, the Detective Bureau, as well as the Special Investigations Division, as well as all of our forensic technicians. That's something that is a very heavy responsibility. He does it magnificent. By the way, the two captains who have been involved in this, Captain Sean Adams and Teresa Orr, have done above and beyond anything that I've ever seen as far as an in-depth investigation for police work. To be honest, they've gone a long distance, much further than where I thought we would be at this particular moment in time. So I want to call up Deputy Chief Gallagher.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Welcome. And
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate you beginning the presentation. So, findings at this point in the investigation, I want to point out that we are 116 days into this investigation. We have already dedicated thousands of investigative hours in pursuit of a conclusion, and we have thousands of investigative hours still remaining before we conclude this investigation. So this is a point in time briefing. I'd like to start first with our attempts to identify any indicators of personal violence as it relates to our suspect. No identified social media accounts could be located. There were no affiliations with any external groups that we could identify. There was no manifesto produced by the suspect. There were no personal emails or paper documents for us to identify and help lead our investigation, and there were no police-reported domestic violence incidences involving this suspect. We looked at his physical health and his financial stressors. On May 31st, 2019, the suspect had in several accounts $20,000. He had no credit card debt. He had not visited a doctor within the past 2 years and had not been prescribed any medication for the past 2 years. We looked at whether or not we could identify a co-defendant or a co-conspirator involved in this incident. No evidence was found to support that there was a second person that had knowledge of or played any role before, during, and after this event. There were quite a number of rumors associated with a former employee. Our investigators thoroughly investigated all leads associated with that former employee, and he was cleared of any involvement associated with this incident. So, we looked at his workplace encounters. There were no documented threatening encounters or physical contacts between our suspect and any person in his workplace. He was actually described by many that we interviewed as quiet, polite, nice guy, and a good listener. We looked at workplace violence indicators. We could identify no pre-attack indicators. We could find no pre-assaultive behaviors. And we found no mental health treatment whatsoever involving this suspect. I mentioned we are 116 days into this investigation. Each and every one of those days, we have asked the question, why? Why did this suspect do what he did? We are still looking to determine motive, and we will continue to try to identify why our suspect did what he did. He shot people he knew, and he shot people he did not know. And in fact, he elected not to shoot people that he had an opportunity to shoot. We looked at the demographics of the victims to try to determine if there was any pattern. He shot 6 women and 10 men. And as you see on the display, the racial demographics of those individuals. So, our investigative work product. We have reviewed so far 5.384 terabytes worth of computer data over the past 116 days. We have another 6 terabytes of computer data that we still have to review, totaling almost 3.5 terabytes worth of information. I cannot tell you how large that number is. It is huge. We have asked the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit to assist us in trying to identify what was going on in the minds of our suspect. They are currently utilizing all the suspect's history and information that we've gathered and what they've gathered. They will provide us with a post-case analysis and a threat assessment. We do not know when that work product will be provided to us. The FBI's evidence response team, as you know, spent quite a bit of time in Building 2, reconstructing the scene. Their final work product will not be completed and provided to us, likely not for the next 6 to 9 months. We, the Virginia Beach Police Department, have completed 99% of all interviews associated with our investigation. And our final report is likely not going to be complete for at least another 6 to 9 months. So what have we done? We have interviewed 757 witnesses and produced over 3,000 pages of investigative work product. 2.33 terabytes of data has already been generated by our investigative task force in association with this investigation, and we have generated over 50,000 computer files in support of our investigation. The Virginia Beach Police Department is not new to criminal investigations. We have investigated very complex criminal investigations before in the past. What we've learned here is that we exceeded the capacity of Microsoft Word to hold all of our investigative work product at this point. I did not know that was possible. I share that with you for context to let you know the amount of work being produced. So what does our task force look like? We have assigned 4 full-time criminal investigators to our task force. We hired back 5 former investigators to assist in this investigation. We have assigned 2 supervisors to oversee the investigation. We have dedicated at a minimum of 440 investigative work hours per week. And we still rely on the support of outside agencies and other Virginia Beach police staff when needed. The infrastructure of our task force, they are assigned and we move them into a separate, isolated workspace that is secure. Not even the chief or I have access to this room. That is how secure that is. We are utilizing specialized computers and computer software to help us manage the investigation, and a centralized data collection point has been established. I want to talk about the police response on May 31st, 2019. So at 4:06 and 32 seconds, that's pretty precise. I know this because these are computer CAD timestamps. A dispatcher in ECCS receives the first 911 call. At 4:08 and 19 seconds, a dispatcher broadcasts over Channel 1 an active shooter in Building 2. At 4:08 and 49 seconds, we receive our first description of what the suspect looks like. It turns out that description is incorrect. At 4:10 and 10 seconds, we receive our second description of the possible suspect. He is described as a black male, bald, wearing a blue polo shirt. This actually is, in fact, a correct description. The police will enter Building 2 at 4:10 and 19 seconds. That is 3 minutes and 47 seconds from the time the dispatcher picks up the phone and we enter the building. That is also exactly 2 minutes between the time the call is dispatched to our personnel and when we enter that building. One of our officers shoots the suspect at 4:16. That is 5 minutes and 51 seconds after entering the building. At 4:19 and 18 seconds, the broadcast officer down is relayed over Channel 1. What that means is one of our officers was shot during a horrific gun battle, and the chief has spoken about that many times. SWAT is on scene at 4:26 and 19 seconds. To put this in context, May 31st, 2019, the SWAT team was deployed to the ocean front for a concert. 20 minutes to rally that staff and respond and be on station is amazing. SWAT will take the suspect in custody at 4:44 and 28 seconds. That is 28 minutes and 28 seconds between the time our officer shoots the suspect and he is taken into custody. The entire event will last 37 minutes and 8 seconds. At 5:32 hours, the suspect is formally pronounced deceased at Virginia Beach General Hospital. So we looked into the suspect's background. We start as early as 1996 after graduating high school and joining the military. He was not deployed in any combat at all. We looked at his education, the degrees he obtained, and all of his employment prior to joining the Virginia Beach city. We looked at his family and his social history. He was married in 2008. We contacted his family members, his friends, and we looked at what hobbies he had. Goes without saying, the suspect had access to a firearm. In fact, he had access to quite a few firearms. In 2016, he purchased 4 guns legally, and he purchased yet a 5th on December 2017 legally. He obtains a concealed weapons permit in April of 2016. He applies for and receives a suppressor permit in August of 2017, and he ordered body armor, which a lot of people might understand it when we talk about bulletproof vests. He orders that in April of 2019. I should point out that that delivery did not occur prior to May 31st, 2019. In 2017, the suspect was separated and divorced. He became isolated from his family, and his family described him as introverted, paranoid, and uncomfortable around people. We looked at his work performance and his job history. He was hired by the city of Virginia Beach on February 20th, 2010 as an engineer 2. He progressed to engineer 3 on August 16th, 2011. From 2010 to 2016, he meets performance standards on his annual or yearly performance evaluation. In 2017, he also meets performance standards on his annual evaluation. However, he was placed on and completed a performance improvement plan. In 2018, in his annual performance evaluation, he receives a improvement required, on his evaluation. He also receives a written reprimand for performance issues from his immediate supervisor. I also want to point out that his immediate supervisor was not in Building 2 when his rampage began. There were no applications or interviews for promotion or transferred identified in our HR system since he was employed in 2010. So his work relationships, he did have some friendly relationships with coworkers. Shortly before this event, at the end of May, there was an issue brought up between this suspect and the purchasing department of our city. His first-line supervisor and his mid-level supervisor supported him in this conflict. So he did have support from his leadership in his department. On May 31st, as we all know, he does submit a professional, respectful 2-week resignation, and not unlike many other resignations that we receive. And he noted in his email that it was for personal reasons. I want to walk through the full day of Friday, May 31st, 2019, as we have identified it through our investigation. It begins with the suspect leaving his residence at 6:58 a.m. and arriving at the complex at 7:16. At 7:21, the suspect uses his entry card, entering Building 2 Ops Public Utilities, 2nd floor, North Hall. At 7:23, suspect starts up his work computer and begins to check emails. At 7:41, he plugs in his iPod. At 10 to 10:30, our suspect conducts web searches of Building 2 maps, ECCS, and the Municipal Center building maps. At 10:30, the suspect sends an email to his supervisor resigning due to personal reasons, as I stated earlier. Supervisor responds, hope that he works out his personal problems and his personal reasons for leaving, and asks to be clear. Your last day will be June 14th. Suspect confirms that date. At 10:46, his first-line supervisor responds back to him with the same information and copies the mid-level supervisor. At 10:52 a.m., suspect swipes his card, enters the second floor hall of Building 2. From 11:23 to 11:58, suspect sends 3 work-related emails. At 12:08, suspect swipes his card on the second floor engineering north hallway. At 12:14, suspect swipes his card, enters the second floor southwest. And at 1 p.m., he sends another work-related email. At 1:13, our suspect is now still in the second floor hallway. At 1:22, the suspect and 2 co-workers leave Building 2 and drive together in the same vehicle. From 1:56 to 3:11 p.m., the suspect and 2 co-workers visit 3 project sites as a part of a routine ride-around inspection process. This is not unusual. This is pretty common. At 3:24, all 3 arrive back at Building 2. Our suspect goes to the second floor. At 3:55 p.m., suspect will send his last work-related email and leave the building. And none of those emails I described was anything out of the ordinary. They were generic, municipal, work-related type of emails. The suspect leaves through the south exit of Building 2. He will go to his car and he will retrieve a gun. What I will describe next is the suspect's movements, estimated based on witness interviews, key card records, and reenactments. As we know, Building 2 has 4 floors. The basement, first floor to the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor is actually the 4th level in the building. So I want to make sure that I contextualize that correctly. So at approximately 4 p.m., the suspect shoots his first victim, who is in his vehicle. That victim is deceased. Suspect then proceeds to walk into the south entrance of Building 2, in which he takes the life of the second victim. He enters Building 2 and will take the life of the 3rd victim at the bottom of the stairs on the south stairwell. At approximately 4:02, the suspect will walk to the 3rd floor, and he will take the lives of 5 people and injure 2. At 4:05 and 56 seconds, the suspect walks to the 2nd floor east side of the building and will take the life of 2 people. At 4:06, we receive the first 911 call. When that first 911 call is received, 10 people have lost their lives and 2 are injured. At 4:08 and 13 seconds, the suspect enters the west side of the 2nd floor and will take the life of 1 person. At approximately 4:10, suspect walks to the 3rd floor and injures 1 person. At 4:10 and 19 seconds, Virginia Beach police officers and detectives enter the building. through the north entrance of Building 2. The suspect walks back to the second floor, and one of the occupants in the building pulls the fire alarm. At 4:12 and 40 seconds, the suspect enters the west side of Building 2. At 4:15 and 07 seconds, suspect enters the east side of the second floor, will take the life of one person and injure another. In less than 60 seconds later, Virginia Beach police officer will shoot and injure the suspect. Over the next 3 minutes, the suspect will attempt to ambush the officers, and as was described, the horrific gun battle will occur. 4:19, officer down. As I indicated, SWAT is on scene. Suspect is taken into custody. First aid is rendered, and the suspect is pronounced dead, as I stated earlier. The photograph that you see here is the last photograph that I will show you. The chief will have one he will show you. But what I want you to notice is the number of bullets that are in that solid wooden door. That door was closed. This firefight that I described is occurring between a closed door. The suspect and the police officers did not see each other. They were firing through that door. You can see his gun and the suppressor on the gun and all the debris that was left behind. So we want to talk about custody. What does that mean? Although this suspect killed a dozen people, injured many, and shot one of our own officers, when we took him into custody, he was fighting with us. We still rendered aid to him, and we tried to save his life. We evac'd him to an ambulance, took him to a hospital so he could obtain medical care. We wanted to save his life. That did not happen. I want to end my portion of this presentation. I want to turn it back over to my boss, Chief Severa, for closing remarks.
Thank you, sir.
Two things that I want to close with, especially on the initial response. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I think what you've just heard is a very in-depth investigation that's going on at this time, and that will continue to go on at this time. I don't think there's any doubt from anybody who's just listened to the factual data that's been given that these detectives and their supervisors are working diligently to try and come to some kind of eventual conclusion as to exactly why things happened. We may never get there, but it's not from lack of trying. After everything that happened, we immediately set up what's known as a unified command. I wish to discuss that just slightly. You know, you have an emergency response system that may be the best of any city of a size of ours. We work very closely together. You have the largest volunteer rescue squad system in the country, and some of those volunteers were at the scene. You have a magnificently trained fire response unit, fire department. And not only that, we have one of the best Virginia Taskforce response systems, not only in the state, in the country. Those firefighters have been around the world on a number of occasions. They're excellent in what they do. And your police department was the first to implement AEDs in the state, the first to implement Narcan in the state. We worked together, we trained together. So when the unified command was set up, it was almost instantaneous. Everybody knew exactly where they needed to be, exactly what their role was in that unified command, which is why we were able to work so close together. The FBI was inserted in the unified command, and somebody asked me, what is our memorandum of understanding with the FBI in cases like this? The memorandum of understanding was I picked up the phone, I called the special agent in charge. Next thing we know, we had 40 individuals at that scene for 10 days, working 10 hours shifts. That's our MOU with the FBI. We know exactly how to investigate cases. Not only are we investigating this case, we had a separate investigation conducted on the death of the suspect. You know, society says if a police officer takes a life, we should investigate it. You would look at this and say, what's to investigate? We still do an in-depth investigation to make sure that everyone in society feels comfortable that when police officers use deadly force, it's done appropriately, as it was in this particular case. We are cooperative with the independent review. I think we've shared all of our documents. We've had interviews, as you've heard. We will continue to be totally open and cooperative with them. We have extensive efforts to provide physical and mental care for the VBPD, for all the first responders, and for all city staff. I'm very, very proud of the fact that we have acknowledged exactly what it means for officer resiliency in our department, how we've then breached out that to the entire city workforce. We are there for everyone in the city who may need assistance. We are still in the after-action review of everything that we've done, and I will be very honest with you, we're probably more highly looking at what we do, how we do it, and when we do it than anybody else can ever look at, because we want to make sure that what we did was excellent and how we continue to move forward. I want to finish with what Deputy Chief Gallagher talked about, the door. This was the area where the firefight took place. This is the area. It is 10 feet wide, ladies and gentlemen. 4 officers stood their ground. They did not retreat. They did not go look for cover. They stood their ground and basically slugged it out, if you will, with this individual, because they knew if he got outside of that room, he would cause more havoc. He would take more lives. That's not what they were going to allow to happen. They stood their ground. They took their shots, and they negated anything that he could do any further. And why? You've heard me say it, because there's a virtue to being a cop, and that's exactly what they did. Deputy Chief and I will be open for questions.
Okay, any questions? Rosemary?
So when they took the ride around with the other employees, when you interviewed them, did they notice anything? Or, I mean, what did they say about his behavior, their conversations?
It was a normal workday, ma'am. They did not notice anything out of the ordinary at that moment in time.
Okay, anybody else? I want to thank you, your department, for stellar work. I would want to thank the families for taking the time to come and join us. I want to take time to thank everybody in the gallery. And we are VB strong, and we still have work to do. It will continue to go forward. But once again, I thought we all thought at this time it was essential to get some information out. But once again, there is work to be done. At this point, we will conclude, but I understand the chief and deputy chief will be available for, questions. Okay.